And there we go.
All right, do we want to start the meeting then? Okay,
I'm ready.
Call the Planning Commission for the Town of McCandless to order. First item on the agenda is review and recommendations of the Sisters of Divine Providence new residential facility plan. There's a series of modifications that the applicant requests that you probably want to walk through.
Yeah, so I've actually got Tim Hamp here again. And Tim, as soon as I'm done here, if you could just let me know who all else you would like to have queued up for their mics and cameras. I just went ahead and put the collection of modification requests on a second appendix page for the agenda. Usually if there's one or two, you know, I'll list them out as an individual recommendation motion, but this was, the agenda page was getting very long when I was putting each of these on here. So overall, there are a couple landscaping related modifications. There is one to leave a small portion of the parking, the new parking lot spaces unpaved but dedicated for parking in the future, which is the thing that our code allows you to do. And a continued waiver request for the sidewalks that are already, you know, that were previously waived, I guess, when this was originally developed. And for the second parcel that is being subdivided off in like a simple subdivision procedure, they've also asked to waive the sidewalks for the north end over there, which I do think makes good sense because we don't really know what's going to end up there someday yet. So why build sidewalks just to have to, you know, tear them? So I'm sure that Tim will get more into all those different aspects. But for everyone's information, the latest engineer review letter is on the Dropbox for the meeting package, as well as the revised plans. And Tim, if you're ready, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, RJ. So good evening again, everyone. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Tim Hamp. I'm a senior project manager with Dirk and Edson. And we are representing the Sisters of Divine Providence application. The last time I was in attendance at the Planning Commission meeting was back in January, following our initial submission for the application. And since then, we've been doing a substantial amount of work to complete some revisions on the plans and also to work on addressing a number of the comments and remarks that we heard at the meeting, and also the letter. Specifically related to Gateway Engineers letters, we have spent a lot of time over the last 2 months trying to address the majority of those comments. And I think if you take a look at the latest letter from Gateway, you'll see that significant progress has been made since last time. We've also provided some additional documentation as part of a resubmission package to address some of the questions in the last Planning Commission meeting that were raised by the Planning Commission board members. And then we've also been working through some more significant plan changes. Probably the one that I'll highlight and just speak to very briefly is a grading change or topography change to the proposed site. We actually reduced or lowered the building and building pad in a majority of the upper area of the parking lots and area around the buildings by 12 inches. This was to reduce the amount of imported fill that we were originally proposing to bring into the site. So by reducing the site by 12 inches, we've significantly reduced the amount of dirt that we're going to be bringing into the site. And certainly that translates to a reduction in construction costs. So certainly an improvement on that end as far as the overall project scope. Specifically related to Gateway's letter, we have received the letter that was dated February 24th. Again, a lot of progress was made on there. Any of the substantive design and documentation comments, if you look through there, have all been addressed. There was one question, it was really a comment that was asking a question about the sanitary line that was running through one of the rain gardens. And I can respond to that tonight briefly. Let me just pull up a graphic here real quick. I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, here, I'll give you the co-host thing. There you go. Now you can share.
Okay. Actually, let me try that again here.
It's a nice background photo though.
Trying to think, I couldn't see it on my end. That's why I wasn't sure. What can you see? Can you see the plan coming over to the screen now?
There we go.
Oh, it just loaded. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what you're seeing here is just there's a plan markup that's showing right now our proposed building here that I'm circling my cursor. The way that the original design was shown and the way the plans were resubmitted, this sanitary lateral extending out to the main, that's how it was designed previously. And the question or the comment that was in the letter is speaking to the fact that that is shown underneath this graded rain garden area here. We have since obtained some utility information in the field. We're actually still working through some of the final details, but rather than that alignment underneath the basin to get out to the main, which runs north-south here, we do believe that instead this green line is going to be the new alignment for that sanitary connection that'll extend up to an existing lateral that comes out of the existing Kearns building east that already connects to the main. So we should be able to not only reduce the length of the line that's needed for that new sanitary, but also remove it from underneath the rain garden, which I believe addresses the question or comment from the engineer. So that's something that we're working through the final details to be able to address that design change. Really, the remaining.
Tim, the only comment I would make on that sewer is just make sure that your civil or your MEP coordinates with the Allegheny County Plumbing Department. They have jurisdiction on sanitary sewer laterals. And
Okay.
you just want to make sure that they're okay with how you're going to connect the new building into another line that's there already.
Okay, I'll definitely have our engineer take a look at
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we don't really have any jurisdiction over that. The only comment, I only made that comment because sanitary sewers and water don't mix in our area. We have a $1 billion regional problem trying to get water out of the sewers. So anywhere we can avoid it being close to it, we try to take it away.
I understood, and to be honest, the reason why it's so narrow is that we've been waiting for quite a bit of time to be able to get some of that utility information located.
Sure.
It's of course it's now trickling in as we're getting our bid documents out the door, but we wanted to at least wait till we got that so we knew for sure where that lateral was coming out of Kearns, so we had a more definitive answer as where it's going. But that alignment that I was showing you based on the information we have, that's pretty darn close to where it's going to end up. So it should work out just fine.
That's great.
Really, I mean, the other comments that are in the letter, if you look through the most recent letter from Gateway, really speaks more to administrative items that need to be addressed that we would certainly expect to be taken care of and is normal for finishing off obtaining final approval. So I believe that the majority of the concerns or comments related to the overall design have been addressed. At this time, we're also working through Npds permit process. The application and the plans have been submitted to the Conservation District. We've received confirmation that they've been received and are under review. And at this time, we're awaiting any technical comments, if any, that we will need to address. Our engineers have been in discussion and coordination with the sewer authority to talk through the sanitary design. That is an ongoing process as far as that planning and design, and certainly will anticipate once we make these last changes to the sanitary line that I just spoke to and showed, we would coordinate that as well just to get any kind of final sign off and approval on that. And we have also submitted water design to the water authority. So at this time, we're awaiting any review comments that need to be addressed for that final design and approval. So all of those administrative items and other agencies reviews are underway and certainly be addressed as we finalize the plan. Based on the administrative nature of where we're at, with these remaining comments in the letter, we're asking that tonight the Planning Commission has a motion to recommend town council approval of the application. And honestly, at this time, other than if there's any questions, that really is the end of my formal remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that members of the Planning Commission have about the project.
Okay. Do you have any other comments, Dan?
Just to highlight, I agree with Tim that they have made significant progress. Our current letter just has some minor remaining comments on it. And we also have some recommendations on the modifications that we agree with what's been requested. The only thing maybe that Tim could just highlight on, I believe that the Planning Commission had a concern about parking last time, and they came back with a revised study to justify the 188 spaces, which they're planning planning for the whole project, but yet not build all 188, leave 24 of those out. Maybe Tim, could you just elaborate on that briefly?
Sure, we did provide a updated parking study as part of our resubmission package. And as
Could you
part-
get back onto the site plan to show us where these are?
I sure can. Bear with me 1 second as I share my screen again. Hopefully you can see the beach again. I'm about to pull over the plans in just a
We got the
second.
beach. There we go.
I mean, if you're offering a beach to McCandless, I'm extremely interested in that.
I wish. So this is a plan that highlights the proposed building here where my cursor is with the somewhat crossing outline of the building. And you can see in some of the shaded parkings where my cursor is highlighting some of the larger parking facilities that are associated with the project. And then as I move down further south, that's also illustrating the parking facility that's south of the building. This dashed line right here is the area where we're referring to the 24 spaces that are designated for future parking if necessary. Right now, the way that we have been showing on the plan and we're asking for the modification is to leave those as grass spaces for now. We have planned as far as our stormwater calculations in the report and as well as the stormwater facilities that in the future, if they do need to be paved, the storm system and all the facilities are designed to accommodate that, if those are paved. So at this time, just because of the, and most, except for on a very rare occasion, the sisters really don't have very much, maybe half the parking lot is full. So at least for these spaces to be left as grass overflow, if there's a rare instance where that's even needed, the majority of the time these would not be needed. So that's the reason why we're asking for the modification. It's just to try to reduce the amount of pavement that is needed at this initial implementation project.
Okay, just to be clear, your modification number 2 on the external sidewalks, is that along Babcock? Is that what you were talking about? Or is that up at the hospital?
I'm gonna switch plans. Yeah, the modification request was really related to all of parcel 1. If you remember from our subdivision plan that we were requesting, we went over last time. We were basically requesting and subdividing a portion of the property in the northeast corner. So as part of our response letter back to the town and also the Gateway engineers, we indicated and noted that a note would be added to the plan that, when this parcel gets developed in the future, that sidewalks will be added at this time. But specifically for the remaining parcel 1, which is really where the core campus is and where our proposed project is. So that would be along Babcock and along Cumberland, at least to where that subdivision line would occur. That's where we're asking for that modification to occur.
Right, say that again. You're asking for the modification so that you do not have to put sidewalks in along Babcock and Cumberland. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
I believe along Cumberland, once you run into a problem with Buckeye pipeline having an easement.
I'm sorry, I may not have heard the question right.
I think Buckeye pipeline has an easement somewhere around there, around Cumberland. And my recollection is when they were building McCandless Crossing East, Buckeye pipeline would not let them build the sidewalks along the townhouses along Cumberland. If that's my recollection, I think it's.
That is correct, Greg.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately don't have all of that history to go along with that. So that's.
I think RJ and our thought on the sidewalk modification was that the campus exists now. It didn't have perimeter sidewalks at the point in time that it was developed. There's a lot of, everything is internal to the site. There's no need or desire to get up on that portion of the road. And but we didn't want to waive it for any future development that they would do on parcel 2. Therefore, the modification is just for the current site that's being developed.
That's
Right.
correct.
And, if, when or if the time comes that that parcel would be developed, I would think if the Buckeye pipeline is still a challenge for putting a sidewalk in there, then that would be a good case for, whoever might develop it in the future to receive a modification there too. But we definitely just wanted to sort of leave the option to still put the sidewalks on there, barring any other issues.
But if we don't put them on now,
They'll never go in.
when they develop parcel 2, even if we require it for parcel 2, we would still not have them on there now. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, I would think, and, Greg brings up a really good point with the easement that we'd want to look into at that time, again.
The easement is on C101.1.
There we go.
Unfortunately, this plan doesn't show all the way over to the parcel 2 that's part of the subdivision.
Yeah, it looks like it may cross the street there though. So that might not be an issue for parcel 2, but I think that it makes a little more sense to kind of cross that bridge if and when someone comes to it, just because, even if they put sidewalks in now, they might end up tearing them up.
Well,
with
didn't
whatever
they
do
just
with
put
that parcel.
sidewalks in for the community or the LaRoche College just to the south of this in the last few years? On Babcock Boulevard?
Along
Yes.
Babcock, yes.
Yes.
And where does that end? Does that end at your property?
I believe it ends at the turn-in, the main turn-in going into LaRoche, I believe. It does not extend, as I recall, as far up as the lake.
Do you
And
know?
I believe also down in Babcock for the university that there's a bus stop down there, which currently the sisters do not have the bus stop as part of their frontage.
I guess what I'm getting at, are we throwing away our chance to get a sidewalk along Babcock at this point in time?
I hope not.
Because there may not be any other development on this property ever.
Agreed.
So it sounds like the question
don't re-
being asked now is maybe, it looks like the easement on Cumberland would definitely be a challenge, even if we
The
didn't grant the
Cumberland one, I don't have any
modification.
problem with, but
Right.
I do think that we should have a access on Babcock because the kids from the college do walk around on there. Now, I know that's not nearly as long as the one on Cumberland. That's a good thing. I don't know how difficult it is, but there were some difficult spots at the college that they took care of pretty well.
I'm just wondering, Ted, isn't there across Babcock on the other side of to the west of LaRoche?
There may be, I don't know.
There
Yeah,
are.
there's a sidewalk on the opposite side of that goes up through the Greek church, along the Greek church parking lot.
Right, and that would take care of any walking.
That doesn't relieve them of their responsibility to have a sidewalk on that side of that very busy road.
There might be an issue, and this is just one portion of it that I'm looking at. I'm trying to line up my Google map image with the property line here. This, depending on how much of the lake is the sister's property versus LaRoche, I think that most of it, if not all, is located on the sister's property. There's some locations along the side there that I think it would be hard to squeeze a sidewalk in, but that's certainly not the whole length of the road.
If you're referring to the lake or the water that's at the bottom of it, that is all within the sister's property, I believe.
Yeah. I would have thought
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that right there. I wish I could, I guess right along where your cursor was, Tim, if you go down and to the left a bit, perhaps. Yeah, like that bottom part where the lake angles out the most. It looks like there might actually be some sort of line there already. But I would be a little concerned about squeezing a sidewalk in just right in that spot particularly. The rest, I don't really have a comment on.
Unless
Well,
it's a topography issue, there's plenty of space. I mean, I think I must drive that stretch every day of the year at some point or another. And that lake is not so close to the road that there's not at least a room for a sidewalk.
Yeah,
You're-
well,
you're-
at the edge, there's a guardrail.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
guide rail along the lake.
Yeah, I particularly where it's closest to the road, I mean, maybe you could physically fit a sidewalk in, but you'd have to take out some trees and a telephone pole.
Hopefully you can see this on my screen here. This is a view along Babcock looking north, and then the pond is to the right. So as we move along here, you can see there's definitely a grading drop off and a rather steep grading drop off in some areas along the
Yeah.
pond that's down
That
there.
section that you're looking at is specifically the area that I was referring to. Just that close section right there to the guardrail in
This
the
could,
lake.
this could certainly be a quite a challenge to be able to get that in there with the grading.
Tim, can you take your picture here and go south to where the existing thing is? How far down can you go?
Yeah, there's a sidewalk all the way up to
Okay.
there.
There's the existing sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
Now that is, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but looks like there's almost a jog in the road right of way. You see
That
what I mean?
sidewalk's on the road side of the guardrail as opposed to what we were talking about a minute
Yeah.
ago.
That's what I was thinking. Everything was on the road side of the guardrail. And there were some challenging little spots in there that they had to go pretty deep on. But they did all that and it seems pretty good to me. So I'm concerned that I think there's plenty of room to put it in. I think you could even get it in between the telephone poles and the roadway. But it's I'm sure it's a matter of cost more than anything else.
Certainly expect that would be a costly matter as well. Never mind the materials, but also the earthwork related to it to make that work. And again, certainly, with the LaRoche and University, I would expect there would probably be more foot traffic accessing the site. In this case, as we talked about before, with the main core of the buildings up here, I don't think from a pedestrian access standpoint, accessing the sister's property is going to be nearly as frequently used as maybe the LaRoche's is. But I know the intent of this is to be along the public right of way.
And again, you see the sidewalk to the west of it, on the other side of the street, that is up on the hillside.
It is.
It is.
I often wonder if that gets much use, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I rarely see anybody using it.
Since that sidewalk is there on the west side, is there really a need to have a sidewalk on both sides?
If you were a pedestrian, you'd say yes. A motorist would say no.
This is a state route. So part of what I would assume they would have to enter into some sort of negotiation, HOP, et cetera, with PennDOT. I mean, like I said, I don't really have an opinion on the length of it. I'm certainly pro sidewalk in most situations. My only concern is just that tight spot by the lake because there is a telephone pole right there. And
RJ, is this not part of our sidewalk district? That goes
I'd have to double check.
through here and all the way up to Corporate Drive?
Give me a moment. I have my comp plan right here.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And the sidewalk district implies what, Kim?
It was part of our comprehensive plan intermodal development
Right.
It's where we've gotten a lot of our grants to the connectivity. We were kind of starting there and branching out from there. And I know I was thinking that it was like McCandless Crossing, LaRoche, Corporate Drive, I was thinking that was it.
There are a couple different spots in here. This one is, I think this area is what's referred to as the Babcock Boulevard loop. So if you bear with me as I pull out all my accordion pages here, we'll take a look.
Well, I'm going to echo what Ted said, and that is that if we don't take the opportunity to build a sidewalk now, it won't be built. And if our objective is to have sidewalks in McCandless, we should require that it be built.
So the, this is gonna be really hard to show on the screen. I apologize. But over here, if all of you following along at home in your comp plans, this is page 29. The way that the consulting firm laid out the Babcock Boulevard loop path actually has it on that western side of the street as the sidewalk is currently cited.
Okay, and it's not the whole road, like both sides, it's only one side.
It does not appear to go on both sides. I mean, it's distinctly on the on the McCandless Crossing side of the road. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the drawing of this was intended to be distinctly on the west side. But let me read the narrative and see if they elaborate on that. Yeah, there are quite a few photos. It doesn't elaborate any further on whether we would be targeting sidewalks or connectivity on both sides. If I had to guess, I wasn't here. This actually predates me being in town, but if I had to guess, I would imagine they were outlining the existing sidewalk where there was sidewalk and then extending that pedestrian bike sort of combination loop throughout here.
I think if it's unclear, we ought to follow the guidance of the ordinance. It says build.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Ted, I'm just gonna mute you momentarily here. I mean, the map in the comp plan is pretty clear to me, but I was not here for those discussions to know why they only had the loop showing on the western side of the street.
So just also as a point of reference, right now there also is no sidewalk on the east side once we get north of our property over to UPMC as well. So even if we got the sidewalk along our stretch, there is a substantial segment there that also does not have a segment up there. I would assume, I can zoom in and check.
No, I don't believe it does. I don't believe it does.
It does not, but it is the town's plan to address that in the very near future. Because UPMC has given us their word that they would be glad to put a sidewalk there whenever we ask. And we will be asking soon. So that would make a very nice connection from there.
It would.
All the way.
It would be a very good connection, particularly considering the sidewalk on the other side of the street is up on the hill.
I have found the section that actually has details in these little markers. There are these little yellow markers along the route. All that it says about this area is number 14. The route continues south. I guess they're assuming you're coming from the north. 925 feet, incorporating existing sidewalks, then crosses Providence Boulevard via an existing crosswalk. And then it's another, number 15, it continues, such and such feet south along the west side of Babcock Boulevard. The sidewalk portion of Babcock Boulevard may need to ride the top of a small hillside along the road requiring a private property easement. So I believe that would be, in theory, I don't think that we've built new sidewalk there since this comp plan was done. So that's probably referencing some of the sidewalk on the western side and completing that down to Duncan, perhaps, and past Duncan. But yeah, that's all I can find in the comp plan.
Thank you for looking.
Sorry.
Okay.
I
Well,
see
don't
it as
know.
a compromise.
Do we have other comments on this by other board members?
I'm just saying, if you're going to require sidewalks on the Babcock side, because UPMC is going to build them, why don't you just require them when UPMC builds it?
Don't know. But they gave us our word
I
they
would
would.
prefer that when we grant sidewalk modifications, we try to, aside from the, parcel 2 being pending development and all that. But if it's something that's going in the ground, I would rather we don't defer sidewalks into an indefinite time where possible.
I think so. I think that's the right course of action. In any event, I think what we ought to do is get a little bit more explanation on the other modifications and then vote on each one so that council has a clear idea of what we think about it.
Sounds good to me.
So why don't we go on instead of beating this to death? How about request number 4, stormwater management design standards? I wasn't quite sure what you were talking about there, but if you could just give us a quick rundown on that.
So I'll keep it as high level as possible. Basically, the ordinance is asking for the stormwater facilities to essentially retain water for over a 24-hour period. And with the way that the rain gardens are designed, I'm going to switch my plan here for a second. And based on the infiltration rates, which pertains to the geology of the area and the soils and all that, the rate that we can hold the water to is less than the 24 hours. And again, as was conveyed to Gateway engineers, and I know that they are aware of and also reviewed as part of that request, ours will essentially, the water will reduce and go away faster than what the ordinance is asking for, but it's something that's related to how fast the water infiltrates and percolates into the ground as opposed to an actual control. And based on the way that we read the ordinance, we take that and read it more as probably written for a facility that might be more of a true stormwater basin that is meant to retain it, whereas a rain garden is really meant to try to infiltrate the water as much as possible.
Is this the basin that you show on this plan? Is that your basin that you're proposing
This is
for this whole plan?
This is a rain garden. That's one of them. And then the second
Okay.
one is also down just to the east here of our maintenance shed. down here. So
Okay.
there's 2 on the site.
Where does the water go from there?
Well, hopefully the water, for the most part, will infiltrate and go down. And I think any of the overflow will go down into the tributary or the
There's a water course there.
water course. Sorry, guys, I was looking for the right term. There's a water course that is right, kind of right along here that runs along the property.
Where does that go? I mean, which way does it go? Let's put it that way. North, south,
It goes to the south.
south, okay. Does it go down to the big pond down at the corner? Corner of Duncan?
That I don't know offhand, to be honest.
No.
No. You're talking about the retention at Duncan and Babcock, Ted?
Yeah,
No, it's further, it's much further east of that.
it is, but it could turn sometime. I mean, there's a lot of space there. I just wanted to know if that's where it ended up.
Yeah, there's basically the way the topography of the site goes, everything on site from our building over essentially goes downhill from the building to the
Mhm.
east, intermittent stream area. And that's essentially where any of that additional water would go into it and flow south.
Okay.
So again, it
And
has
what is the modification that you wanted there?
It's essentially to allow our facility to be designed to have the water be retained for less than 24 hours, whereas the ordinance says it should be for more than 24 hours.
Okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if you're far away from your screen or not.
Now, unfortunately, I'm right next to it and my mics are turned up all the way.
Ted,
Okay.
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, so let me do a little Zoom translating here. So if I understand correctly, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. What they're asking for is essentially they're designing rain gardens as the infiltration system instead of
Right.
maybe traditional detention ponds. So I believe when we wrote our stormwater management standards, we probably were writing with one of those larger ponds in mind to say we don't want it to dewater in less than 24 hours, essentially. What
Okay.
they're arguing is based on the infiltration rate of the actual designed rain garden, since it's not the same type of facility, they would dewater more appropriately in 18 or 15 hours if this modification was approved.
Oh, okay.
Essentially,
Did I get that
Good
right?
job explaining that. We're gonna fix that in the ordinance updates.
All right.
Okay,
So-
that's much better.
So my understanding is that the longer water is held back, the better that it helps the flooding issue to have that water percolate back into the streams and et cetera. So for it to go back in 15 to 18 hours seems to me to not be as prudent or safe, especially when you're just looking at a 1 year 24-hour storm from 15 hours to 24 hours. It seems to me it's safer to have it held on to for the full 24 hours. I mean,
I guess the difference though is that, for a traditional basin, which would just retain it and then release it, the intent here is that the water would be infiltrating back into the ground, which certainly would be safer as opposed to just releasing it downstream, essentially.
Dan, do you think you can layperson translate this one? Because explaining this might even be a little bit over my head.
So the requirement is to retain the 1 year storm on the site. That's the requirement. And the geology, as Tim has described, it doesn't work with the dewatering time that's in the ordinance. The geology says that the ground will take the water more quickly than the dewatering time occurs. Flooding has nothing to do with this because essentially we're retaining that storm on the site. We're not letting any of that get away. And then
You're saying it's absorbed into the ground.
correct. That's the goal.
Or into the
It
plants.
percolates in the ground, yes.
The goal is infiltration.
And this difference is primarily because a rain garden functions more to disperse the water into the surrounding, I guess geology might be the right word, into the surrounding area rather than to sort of kind of hold it almost like a bathtub that you're slowly draining. It's not like
Right.
that, which is what this design regulation was more written in
Okay.
mind of.
That sounds good.
It mixes, there's a disconnect between rate control and infiltration. And that's the modification they're asking for. And I don't have any problem with it. It won't affect anybody downstream.
Okay, good.
okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
are there any-
Thank you for the clarification.
Are there any other comments by any of the planning commission members on any of these attachments at this point? Maybe we can vote on these individually. Okay, the request number 1
Okay, good.
is a request to preserve, preservable trees requires all trees having a diameter of greater than 6 inches, not interfering with rights of ways or dwellings to be preserved. Applicant requests to remove 43 live trees over 6 inches, as well as to remove 14 dead or dying trees over 6 inches. Proposed to add 65 new trees for a net gain of 22 live trees. Is there any question or comments on that before we vote on
Well, isn't there a net gain really of 8 as opposed to 22?
it?
Yes, I think so too.
I was going to ask the same thing, but they weren't
Well,
counting their
I'll
dead
cop
trees.
that if we disagree with the way that that's assessed, that's my error, not theirs.
Okay. In any event,
The question that I had is, we didn't say, we said that the trees were larger than 6 inches. Is there a 100-year-old tree there that is going to be taken out? You didn't say the actual size of the trees. There could be some substantial, wonderful trees there that were allowing to be taken out, and they weren't, it didn't give any details as to what kind of trees they were.
The language in the ordinance only says that diameter over 6 inches, and that's it. So I guess that's probably what the modification would be speaking to. If I understood this one correctly, they were requesting this because essentially the location of the parking lot required the trees to be removed. It's probably kind of iffy if those are considered preservable. But what the ordinance says is anything that's not interfering with a dwelling. So since technically a parking lot is not a dwelling, it gets classified as an otherwise preservable tree. I'm not sure about the further details of the 43 live trees. From what I understand, they're relocating a handful of smaller ones, but those would not be 100-year-old trees like we're considering.
There's 15 trees that we are relocating right now that are aligning in existing drives, and it's because it's in an area where we're proposing a revised driveway approach to the new building and doing earthwork. We are attempting to relocate those to be able to preserve them, in addition to any of the other trees that we are going to try to preserve. That's outside of the areas of development where either we're paving, putting a new building, or doing substantial earthwork that frankly makes it impossible to preserve the trees and the root system that the trees have.
The new trees that you're proposing, they would be eventually over 6 inches in diameter?
Well, yeah, I mean, all the trees that we're proposing would be installed to be implemented initially to meet the minimum ordinance requirements, and then they certainly would all be able to grow.
But they would be canopy trees. Is that correct?
That's correct. That we're noting
Okay.
those to be shade trees that would produce a canopy. That's correct.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Kim, I have been back on that property. There are some very large, very mature, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were 100-year-old trees that I'm sure are going to be taken out. And I agree that new trees will be planted. All you have to do is look across the street, across Babcock, and you can see what happens when you take out old trees and plant new ones. It looks like a barren area.
So that's the reason my question is, what are these trees like? Because sometimes parking lots can be built around these trees, or these trees can be incorporated in some way and save their beauty and their value. And I couldn't find where that was addressed anywhere here. We're just blindly agreeing for them to take out 100-year-old trees. That seems concerning.
I'll be honest, I find this requirement a little awkward. That's not a statement as to whether we should or should not recommend it to this modification to be granted, but just there's nothing stopping the applicant right now from cutting down their own trees just because they feel like it. And so it seems a little unwieldy to apply it to this development, but it is there. So we have the right to enforce it if we so choose.
I think there has to be some-
I can tell you that, the trees that we're talking about in some cases are smack in the middle of where the building's going to go, where we're trying to develop the parking. And
Well, they're exempt for dwelling or right of way. I mean, if they're in where you're going to put the dwelling or the right of way, it says you can take them out. It's just the other places.
And in some of those cases, if we're doing earthwork or grading to accommodate those other features. And, I'd love to be able to save all of them, but in some cases where we're just changing the grade too much to be able to preserve them, it's just not possible with the scheme the way it's laid out.
Yeah,
I think this plan is pretty tight. And I think they have the capability to take out trees where they need to.
I mean, we're certainly trying to keep it, compact development as we can within the core with the other buildings and the existing drives and parking that's there now that's going to stay, never mind to be able to develop this and the challenge of the topography. I'm sure you've all been over to the campus and know this site well. The topography that's there now that we're also dealing with just adds to the complexity Never mind underground utilities that are there, and both existing that we're trying to weave our development through, and features, as well as any proposed infrastructure needed to make it happen. So it really does make it a significant challenge to be able to preserve all the trees. Anywhere where we possibly can, we are, but it's just not possible in all these cases, obviously.
Any other comments? Okay, could we have a motion on modification request number 1?
Ted, shouldn't you be calling for public comment on anything we vote on?
Say that again?
Shouldn't we be calling for public comment on anything that we vote on?
I didn't think we had any public here. Do we have any public?
Might, I don't know who everyone in the audience
Okay,
is.
I thought at the beginning you said it was just a developer.
There have been a couple people that have joined. I mean, I think they're all developers, but it can't hurt to ask.
Okay,
And also, RJ, did you, is it, these Zoom instructions, have they been updated to say, put the name, address, and what you're going to comment on it, and then press enter?
There is an entire tutorial video.
Well, where do you get that?
It's on the website. It's displayed with every posting of a public Zoom meeting link. Or at least it should be, I should say. I don't control the website, but I did provide that information, so I can double check and see if it made it on there. For any viewers at home who may be wondering how to provide public comment, if you are here and an audience member, you can type in the chat box your name, address, and the issue you wish to comment on. Make sure to press the enter key after you are done typing so that your message sends.
any comments?
I
Anybody come in?
do not see anyone signed up to provide comment.
Okay. Well, let's proceed then with our vote on modification number 1. Is there a motion to accept this modification? Or recommend approval, I should say?
I move to make approval of it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
Okay, so we've
I'm
got,
opposed as well.
I'm just gonna,
Who
for
was
record
that?
keeping here,
Jonathan?
That was Brendan.
Brendan? Oh, okay.
the first motion
should-
was made by Greg, the second was made by Dan, and we have
No.
Brendan. Oh,
No, you're
is
right.
that correct?
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
you did. So we have Brendan and who else opposed?
Dan.
I did.
Dan. Okay, so Brendan and Dan are opposed. Who is in favor? Do we need a roll call vote
I
here?
am in favor.
Okay,
I'm in
Okay.
favor.
all right, so we've got 3-2, and the noes are Dan and Brendan. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Got it.
Okay, modification request number 2. Applicant requests to continue to waive external sidewalks for the Providence Heights campus as it is the existing condition of the property, and to defer installation of sidewalks on the newly created parcel until final use is determined. What I would suggest is that we,
Break that down.
pardon?
Break that down into 2.
Well, what I was going to say is I would suggest that we require them on Babcock Boulevard,
Yeah.
and we can modify, we can delay them at the other places,
So if
or to
that
waive them at the other
is,
places.
if that is the way that someone in the group wants to make the motion, you could make the motion, using that language, and then everyone can vote on that. You don't have to vote on what I've got written here for number 2 precisely.
But if other people have other opinions, state them now.
Yes.
I think you stated it well, Ted. I would make a motion that we vote on having sidewalks installed along Babcock and currently not installed along Cumberland in parcel 1 and 2.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the motion
I-
officially is to waive on Cumberland, essentially, only,
Right.
correct? Okay,
Cumberland parcels 1 and 2.
waive Cumberland only,
It's a waiver, but it's really a deferral until.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. the
Right.
same thing.
right, wait,
Okay.
defer for parcel 2.
Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind doing the first and second again, just because I'm writing a bit here. Who made the first motion?
Well, I made the motion.
And
Okay,
Jonathan seconded.
all right. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, let's go through the vote again. Aye. Who wants aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Hey,
One nay
Okay.
from Greg.
So 4-1, and the no is Mr. Wakauskas.
Okay. Modification request number 3. Parking requirements require all parking spaces, aisles, and drives to be paved. Applicants request to leave 24 spots of 188 total unpaved but reserved for overflow parking if needed in the future, and estimates about 100 spaces to currently be in daily use. I think the last part is superfluous, but they showed us where the 24 spots were. Is there any comments on this? Okay, could I have a motion?
I move to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We got a unanimous one there. That's good.
All right, that one was easy.
Yeah. Modification request number 4, stormwater management design standards. Facilities that attenuate, detain rainfall runoff are required to hold runoff volume from a 1-year, 24-hour storm event for at least 24 hours. Applicant requests for Rain Garden North and Rain Garden South facilities to dewater in 18 and 15 hours respectively, based upon design infiltration rates. Any comments? Okay, could I have a motion?
I'll move to accept their proposal.
I'll second.
Who is seconding?
Greg.
Great.
Greg? Okay. Could I have, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, another unanimous one. Modification request number 5, landscaping requirements. Applicant requests to reduce the overall quantity of new plantings based upon the substantial existing vegetation on the property and to concern of potential overplanting of the new parking areas in a way that would interfere with their function. I don't think we really discussed this one, but
We did not, but I think it would be great if the developer could elaborate further.
could you show us your landscaping plan and show us what you have in mind? Tim? Yeah, there you are.
Just give me, bear with me 1 second.
We're back on the beach.
Okay, so at a high level, this is part of the landscape plan shown here on C1061. And then it does carry down to C1062. So as you can see, we do have within the parking lot areas, and then in particular, also around the building, you can see a substantial amount of tree plantings, which are the larger circles that you see. And then also we have the smaller circles are more of the shrub, ground covers, and other smaller plant material that is to be proposed and planted for the project. So certainly, we have provided, shade trees and ground covers for the parking lot areas, provide shade and aesthetics for those areas, which meet the intent of the ordinance. And again, that's a similar pattern and amount of planting that is shown for all the different parking lot areas. And then also for planting around the perimeter of the building for the ordinance, we are showing a substantial amount of planting right along the foundations, as well as within garden areas and approaches to the main building features and dining terraces in the back side. With the way that we are approaching or looking at this, number one, from the quantity of material that we're proposing, it certainly meets the intent of the ordinance. We're providing a substantial amount of planting throughout the project, which is only going to supplement or add to the existing planting that's on campus now. That is going to be remaining, even though we are taking down some of the trees. There is a large amount of trees that are existing on campus that are going to remain and be touched. Plus the fact that this building and the parking is frankly interior to campus. It's not like this is out right along the main edges like a lot of the commercial properties. This is more in the core of campus area, set back from the property. So any of the planting that is along, certainly along Cumberland, is also going to help to screen any of these areas anyway. So that existing screening, which is going to remain in addition to the parking lot planting and the substantial planting around the buildings, really does provide a very nice project, and certainly we believe meets the intent of the ordinance as it's written.
Is the new plan, or is the planting along Cumberland, is that old or new?
Everything that you're seeing up along here, that's existing, is going to
Existing,
remain.
okay.
Can you identify generally what it is you're proposing not to plant? You've said you will plant some things, but what is it that you're trying to avoid planting?
I'm not trying to avoid planting anything. It's just more about the quantity of planting. And part of what we're also trying to do is to leave areas for maintenance, snow removal. And there is also some, the sisters also have a desire not to overplant, just from a security standpoint. Sometimes depending on the amount of material and where it's planted, it can create areas that can be perceived to be unsafe, where people could be potentially hiding behind. So allowing it to be a little bit more open from a site lighting standpoint at night, as well as any security cameras, allows more open views from the security. And then also not necessarily having everything be shrubbed up in the parking lot areas does create and allow room for snow removal to be pushed off the parking lot areas and drives during the winter when those times occur. If they are ringed with the plants, the shrubs and all that stuff, there isn't any room for that. So a lot of times that snow gets pushed up on top and eventually will kill the plants anyway. So we do want to meet the intent of the ordinance as part of providing the plantings and making sure that it looks nice, provides the shade, but also be functional for how the sisters need to be able to maintain the property and maintain the security for its residents as well.
Yeah,
What is in the what is in the rain garden?
The rain garden has essentially a seed mix and a no-mow grass mix. So it's really meant to be, instead of a manicured lawn that has to get mowed all the time, there'll be a planted grass mix on the bottom of the basin, and then the slopes will be a no-mow grass mix that really requires no maintenance and has a natural look to it rather than a barren sloped edge. But the focus of it, and again, we're up against a wooded property here, so the intent of it was to still allow and preserve views out to the wooded area, and then focus a large amount of the planting areas, within the building core and the garden spaces, the arrival experience at the main entry, as well as the dining terrace and the back patio as well for the recreation uses of the sisters.
I think that with this one, I can see the case more clearly. Because the way that I read the landscaping requirements in the ordinance, they're kind of written assuming that you're coming at the property after it's been moonscaped. And you're trying to add vegetation back into a site that otherwise might be, a sea of pavement or just sort of unbuffered buildings, But with this site, it's pretty significantly wooded already. They're still planting a lot of trees. Ultimately, and because they design,
And shrubs and ground cover, not just.
Yeah,
trees.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of green stuff going into the ground, not to mention the way that you all designed it. It focuses on the limits of disturbance, which is sort of like an earth moving term. But I assume that means that you weren't counting any sort of vegetation that's outside of what we would refer to as the limits of disturbance of the project area. So all of that wooded area that's pre-existing is not getting counted in our landscaping requirement calculation.
We're focusing the proposed stuff all within the proposed project area that is going to be disturbed and part of the proposed improvements.
Yeah, and ultimately with these modifications, you know, it's not the same process as a variance. So the bar to prove hardship is not there with the modification. What it's asking is show us essentially that what you're proposing is equal to or better than what the ordinance would achieve on its own. I think given the fact that there's a lot of green already on this property, we're not necessarily looking at something that would be lesser than a strict adherence to the code.
We certainly don't feel like it is. We certainly feel like, you know, as far as the material, where it's located and the quantity certainly meets the intent of providing those features that the plants would be providing and adding to the site aesthetics.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then let's vote on modification number 5. All in favor?
Do we have a motion?
Oh, we need a motion, excuse me. Could I have a motion?
Move to approve the applicant's request to reduce the overall quantity of new plantings based on the substantial existing vegetation on the property.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Well, let's get a count then. Who is in favor? Can you get back to the screen with the people on it, RJ?
Yeah. Tim, do
I'm
you mind taking your screen share down?
There we
Thank
go.
you.
I apologize.
Greg,
4. I approve it.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Brendan? Is Brendan still here?
He is here.
I'm here in favor.
Okay. In favor, okay. Dan, you're
I'm
against.
opposed.
And I'm for it, so there's whatever that is.
4 to
5
1. And
Okay.
we've got Dan on the no side.
Right.
All
Okay.
right, I will compile all of these into the staff report that council gets out of this.
Okay, that gets us down to the point where we approve or disapprove the entire property plan.
If you don't mind, Ted, I have one more question. And we
Sure.
brought this up last time, and I thought it was going to be looked into, and I don't know, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. There's a school on that property, and there's 8 or 10 or 12 buses that park every
Yes.
day picking up those students. And because of the new building, that was going to have to be rejiggered in some way. Has it been, and is it acceptable?
Are you referring to the circulation related to the school? Is that what you're asking about?
Well,
For the buses.
those 10 or 12 buses have to sit idling and waiting for the students. They did that in the past because of the way the configuration was. Can't happen under the new building because it's going to take up the space where the buses used to sit. Is there a new place for the buses to sit? And I think it was Rob Gardner who I thought wisely suggested that it be somebody approach the busing service to make sure they agreed with where they were going to be required to sit.
So this was a topic that was discussed with the sisters. And at this time, there hasn't been a final decision made about exactly how they're going to handle it. It's still one of the things that needs to be worked out, not only as far as how the sisters want to handle it, but also in discussion with the school. You can see my screen at this point, I hope?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what this graphic illustrates is with the proposed scheme after the project is built, one option that the sisters are considering for how the circulation will get handled. What I'm showing here is really related to afternoon pickup, where the red arrows coming up from Babcock is really would be both parents, in the cars as well as the bus traffic would come up the hill to where the mother house is currently. One option that they're looking at is that, and that's shown in this scheme, is the orange dashed line that I'm showing here represents the extent of the stacking or the lining up of the parent cars that would wait for the students across the front of the building. And then the buses would carry on and then turn onto the service drive into the back and then stack up around to the north side of the provincial house, which is where the drop off and pickup occurs currently for the Alpha school that's there now. So the stacking distance that's shown here, as well as the stacking distance that's here in yellow, would be sufficient based on the amount of cars and buses that the sisters and the Alpha school have currently. They would still be able to drop off and pick up at the same door, and then both of the buses and the cars could then exit back down the driveway to Babcock Boulevard. So this is essentially how one option could look as far as the afternoon. And then in the morning, because the buses and the cars arrive at the same time, really there's no pattern to it, just whoever gets there first and comes up. They really see it occurring in a similar manner that's happening now, which is depending on who pulls into the site first. They drive up the driveway. In this new scheme, they would again utilize the service drive behind the provincial house, pull around to the north side to the drop-off point. Again, that's where both the buses and the cars would drop off, and then exit the site down the driveway again, back to Babcock Boulevard. So it certainly is something that the sisters have been talking about and discussing. There's more conversation need to happen both internally as well as with the school, but I'm confident there's a number of different options that are being considered and can be worked out that can be accommodated by the site. That also does stay out of and will not interfere with the circulation related to the new residence project once it's completed.
Tim, on your first picture here, if you get back to that, there we go. If this looks like a more viable one, if there's a sidewalk along the front of the building, is there a sidewalk there, or will there be? Let's put it that way.
Well, I believe what may happen, because again, this is for the afternoon pickup. Usually what happens in the way that it works right now is that the buses currently pick up first. So I believe that, in this scheme, the way that could work is that the buses would pick up the students that are riding the bus first. They would then exit, and then as it's happening now, after all the buses leave, then the parents will be able to pick up their kids here as well. So I believe that really utilizing the area that's just up here, that's near the school, is where that drop or where that pickup area would occur for both the parents in the cars as well as for the buses. But again,
well, I've actually picked up my grandkids up there, and it's a little bit, it's pretty disorganized. The kids will come out and they're supposed to stand there, but they see the car and they just run. So it would be better if they could come out of the building, go down to the front somewhere here, and then pick up a car. But they would need a sidewalk to do that.
Well, and again, if they decided to change how they're doing it, where it's a one at a time, again, where the car would be, the first car in line, that would be right there, and it would be a very short connection just to walk over.
Well, keep that in mind. I think that's fairly important. We don't want the buses, and right now the buses and cars interact to some extent, and the kids do take off. They see their parents or their grandparents and make a mad dash. It's kind of strange, but that's the way it happens.
Well, and certainly, and I'm sure that the sisters certainly will, be keeping the safety of the students in mind, and as they're working through making decisions on how this works out, that will be at the forefront, and certainly try to make it work most efficiently, but also keep it safe for everybody involved.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just notice, I pick up my grandkids at North Allegheny Elementary once in a while, and I actually go to the front of the door where they're come out and walk with them.
Yes.
So you don't do that, or you can't?
They don't have the facilities for that. They don't have any sidewalks. I know exactly where you're talking about. I have kids there too, and there's a lot of places to walk there. It's a lot of sidewalk area.
And again, that's something that maybe they, they may decide to control, where instead of having it be a free-for-all, if that is what, is, as you're describing, may be occurring on occasion, that is controlled, that, only the student for the first car. I mean, where my kids go to school, I also drop off and pick them up, and they do it as, 1 or 2 cars at a time in a limited area. And then they literally have someone stand there and call the students. They have the names of the students in the car, and then the monitor calls only those students, for those cars that are right up there. So I do believe that there's a number of ways that it can be managed safely and not have a haphazard, just free for all the students going. I do think that they could find a way to
Okay.
control it and be safe and also efficient.
We'll keep that in mind in your development here.
Will do. And I certainly will pass your remarks on to the sisters as well.
Any other comments? Okay. RJ, is there any other reason why we shouldn't make a motion to approve this project?
I think this is about one of the cleanest review letters we've had come through here since. So, we've already adjudicated the planning commission's opinion on the modifications. I think that's really all that's left to do.
Steve, do you have any comments?
It sounds ready to go to me.
Okay. I don't know oh, there's Dan. Everything okay on your end? Except for what you put in your letter?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I'd like to have somebody make a motion to approve this and recommend approval to town council.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, that's Jonathan. Is there a second?
Second, I'll say.
Who was that? Greg?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay,
The 5-0.
that's it.
Tim,
Yes.
would you, before this comes to council, would you please be sure to bring a clean survey of where the pipeline is, where the sidewalk is, where the road is, because it's very unclear on this C-101, and bring that when this comes to council. I would appreciate that.
Okay, I will work with our team to try to bring those graphics with us.
All right, all the way up Cumberland, if you don't mind.
Okay, we will, I'll take a look at the survey extents that we have for the property, and any available survey information that we have, I'll make sure it's available for that discussion.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Think you can
thank
turn that around by March 22nd?
Yes.
Okay, then that's going to be our goal date.
Okay, I figured that you and I would talk after the meeting as far as some of that coordination, so.
Yep. You sure will.
We can talk more details then.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is a preliminary review and discussion of 8500 Thompson Run Road Garden Apartment plans.
So first thing that I need you all to do is just do the motion to accept the application so that they are officially on the clock.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I'm sorry, RJ, what are we accepting?
So to actually consider the application officially, we have to have a motion from the planning commission.
We're accepting it for review, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll so move. I'm not sure what that's all about, but I'll so move it.
It is
Keep
a
us-
formality.
Yeah, okay.
Starts the
Yeah,
time.
we never did this before, that's all.
Yeah, I got into the code and I felt a little better after I read it, having you guys do the motion for real, so.
Okay. So.
I just need a second.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, I'll say.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're ready to go then.
All right, so this application is being brought forth by Mr. Don Paul. You all may recall that this property was rezoned from a C7 to an R3 probably sometime around this time last year, I'm guessing, because I remember this actually occurring and I have crossed the 1-year threshold.
February a year ago.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of our first town council meetings back on Zoom. So The developer has worked through potentially looking at some townhomes. That didn't work out with the site configuration, so now he has come back proposing 2 garden apartment buildings, potentially with 24 units each, which is what the limit is on density per our code. There are a couple modifications on grading that are potentially involved, and they have a few variances that are before the zoning hearing board at the meeting at the end of this month. So this one is not going to be ready to go until those variance hearings play out and until any revisions, substantial revisions on the technical comments are completed. There is an engineer's letter in your Dropbox packet. Yeah, so from what I understand, seems that Mr. Pohl wanted to come with his engineers to the planning commission and sort of get some initial feedback before they really dig into the revisions. So without further ado, I can turn it over to Mark Schmidt, Don Pohl, and Tom Taylor, who are the engineers and the developer on this project.
Thank you, RJ. I'm Tom Taylor from Hampton Technical Associates. The subject site we're talking about is 8500 Thompson Run Road, as RJ had specified. It's 3.76 acres in size and was formerly the YWCA. It will be 2 24-unit apartment buildings that we're proposing. There will be 74 indoor parking spaces, as well as 22 exterior parking spaces in a proposed parking lot. It was a previously developed site, so the utilities are located on site. We did have to obtain an easement from Allegheny Cemetery to connect to the existing sanitary main that is located on the other side of Thompson Run Road. And with that easement, we can connect a new sanitary lateral from our 2 proposed apartment buildings to the larger sanitary line on the other side of Thompson Run Road. We have a storm sewer main that's also located on Thompson Run Road that we will be discharging our stormwater to. Stormwater management facilities on site are proposed with 2 tanks. One larger tank located underneath the parking lot to accommodate the surface runoff from the property, the buildings, and the parking lot, and a smaller tank located closer to Thompson Run Road, which will handle the rest of the runoff from the driveway. And these 2 tanks will tie into that existing storm sewer main in Thompson Run Road. We have landscaping that is addressed for the buffer yard, general landscaping, and parking lot. RJ, is it okay if I share the screen?
Give me 1 second and I will give you the Zoom wizard powers. There you go.
Okay. Sorry, just working on getting to the landscaping page here for you. Okay. Let me know if you can see the screen.
It is loading, but it appears the share worked. Yep.
Okay,
All right.
great. Okay, so as you can see, this site has quite a bit of landscaping proposed here. We have 3 different types of buffer yards that we are proposing. To the north, we have the Mascari Auto Repair Collision Center, and we have a type H buffer yard located there. You can see it's significantly deeper. It's a 30-foot deep buffer yard. And then to the east, we have a type B buffer yard. And that is a residential area to the east. And to the south, we have a temple, and we have a type D buffer yard located there. And as well to the west is another institutional zone, which also receives a type D buffer yard. The internal landscaping you see here addresses the ordinance requirements for general landscaping. We have 25 canopy trees proposed, 25 understory trees proposed, and we also have 3 understory, 2 shade trees, and several shrubs to satisfy the parking landscaping requirement. As RJ had mentioned, we do have a few variances that are going to be presented to the zoning hearing board later this month. The one is requesting the parking stall size to be reduced from 10 by 18 to 9 by 18. As we've noticed in adjacent municipalities, the 9 by 18 is the standard dimension, and this is also located within the McCandless ordinance as a dimension for multi-use parking. We're also seeking a second variance request that requires parking to be at a minimum 15 feet away from the structure. We're asking to reduce that down to 5 feet so that we can reduce the amount of impervious surface on this lot. There's another variance request in for the calculation of density. When we put together the calculation for density, it comes up with 46.18 dwelling units. And we're seeking a request to allow for 48 units. So each building can have 24 instead of 23. We do have 4 waivers to present to you tonight. The one is for a sidewalk that would be located along Thompson Run Road. This is a significant cut slope. You may be familiar driving along this road that that slope really comes right down to the edge of pavement. And there's a series of overhead wires and utility poles located there. So some significant retaining walls, relocation of utilities would be necessary to install a sidewalk on this frontage. The adjacent properties do not have a sidewalk, so we would not be connecting a sidewalk to any existing sidewalks within this area. The second waiver modification we're seeking is for maximum slope cut shall not exceed 2:1, and a fill slope shall not exceed 3:1. We are not proposing any cut slopes steeper than 2:1. However, we are proposing fill slopes at 2:1, and we're seeking modification to the ordinance to allow for 2:1 fill slopes. We also are seeking a waiver to the requirement of planting a buffer yard type D at the top of a cut and bottom of a fill. As you may be aware of this site, the site already has a series of cut and fill slopes. And we're in this plan that you see on your screen, you can see that we have the building, one corner of the building is located near the fill slope, and we're seeking a waiver here so that we can allow both buildings to be positioned in this orientation to maximize the use of the site. And we need to have a modification to the variance to allow for the building placement here. There's one other modification, and that is the top of cut or toe of fill to be permitted closer than 20 feet to a lot line for any slope over 15 feet. This site has 3 sides where this kind of takes place. You can see the eastern and the western and southern side. We do have proposed grading that would come within the 20 feet of the property line. But we're asking to be allowed to grade into that 20 feet because these slopes are already existing at this elevation of more than 15 feet. We're just leveling out the buildable area from the previous development. We do have, as RJ stated, the review letter from Gateway Engineering, and the majority of these comments are minor in nature, and we will have these addressed in our next submission that will be returned within the week. There was a comment in there about a traffic study. We have a traffic engineer engaged to do the traffic study. And we also had a comment in there about the geotechnical report relating to the previous concept of doing townhomes. So ACA Engineering is putting together a new geotechnical report for this new proposed development of 2 apartment buildings. And we understand that tonight we're not seeking approval, but we are seeking your feedback and comments so that we can make sure that this development meets the needs and wants of the community of Town of McCandless.
Okay, you have a lot to talk about tonight.
Yes.
Let's go over those. First of all, you have variance requests from the that you're taking to the zoning hearing board.
That is correct.
What are they? Tell us again what they are.
Yes. I'm sorry, that was a lot of information. 3 variances are, one is for the parking stall size. The ordinance calls for 10 by 18. However, within the ordinance, there is a multi-use parking table that specifies 9 by 18 as a parking stall size. And this is also the parking stall size of neighboring municipalities. And so we're seeking to reduce impervious surface by reducing the parking stall sizes from 10 feet wide to 9 feet wide.
Okay. Well, let's start with that one. RJ, comments?
Yeah, I recommend pretty much every development that comes through to apply for this variance at this point. I think that the 10-foot spaces are oversized and definitely something that we will be cleaning up as we move forward in the future with that zoning.
Now,
What
we
do I wanna call
required
it?
in the
Reboot.
past, whenever we reduce the size of these, to use those, I don't know what the terminology is.
The
but
angled ones
horseshoe-
with the double striping, yeah,
double
that's
striping.
in there. I gotta be honest, I'm really bad at parking, and sometimes the 10-foot spaces are so wide that I miss because I think myself out of
Well,
parking.
the double stripes actually get you more into the center of the
Yeah,
space.
I really, 9 foot is very standard. I just, when we're struggling with impervious surface and stormwater runoff, I don't think that 10 foot or even the 9 foot angled with the stripes in between are really serving our best interests. So, yeah.
What do you have against the stripes? The
Yeah, they
double
just
stripes?
add more space. I mean, that's kind of the issue is part of the reason that the parking spaces are so commonly 9 foot wide, just with single stripes, is to sort of reduce that pavement C impact.
I'm
So
having a little bit of trouble here. Are you recommending the double stripe 9 foot wide?
what the variance request is for is single stripe 9 foot wide.
Oh, okay.
I personally will not be opposing that when it comes to the zoning hearing board.
All right.
I know, preferably I like the 10-foot wide and I got the dents in the doors to prove it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if anyone has ever tried to get a baby car seat out of a vehicle, you realize that a 9-foot is not a large enough space.
Or on a windy day, you open it a little bit and it flies
That's
right
right.
open.
If
Yep.
you need to get a box out of your car, you cannot get your door open enough to do that.
What does
Giant-
our ordinance? doesn't our
Giant Eagle
ordinance
is
allow-
always a pleasure to shop at because they have those nice wide spaces. You can get kids in, everything that you need to do. I'm not a
Doesn't
fan.
our
of the
ordinance
small.
allow a 9.5-foot wide space with the double stripes
If they are angled.
if they are angled?
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't seem to save much space. I mean, all I'll say is that 9-foot is very standard nowadays. So that's a variance that's before the zoning hearing board.
Yeah, it would save like 13 feet in this case. Okay, any other comments on that? All right, can we have a little mini vote on this? Can I have a motion
Well,
to?
so the variances are something that go,
I know that that's going to be handled by the zoning hearing board,
okay.
but I think we ought to give them a recommendation, don't you?
Well, I don't know that that's something we've done in the past. My only thought is that we be careful to not tread into the territory of giving testimony, not in front of the zoning hearing board for pending appeals, but maybe the lawyer can tell us what he thinks here.
Okay,
Unless the zoning ordinance specifically requires a recommendation from the planning commission, you're not required to do so. Some communities do have that requirement. I don't believe that.
We don't here. It
I
just
don't believe
suggests
we
that
do.
it comes here first in case the planning commission has any comments on the plan that would change it to not require a variance anymore.
Yeah, I understand the review, but I don't think you need to vote on anything, Ted. You can certainly provide your comments to the
all
ZH
right,
if y'all have any.
I'd like to provide a comment.
go ahead. This is
You know,
Don
this
Pohl.
is gonna be, yeah, this is Don Pohl, and this is for all intents and purposes. Almost all of the parking for the residents is gonna be indoors. And the spaces are designed at 9 feet, so they're gonna be assigned parking spaces. So it's not like you're in a community parking lot and using, you know, different types of vehicles or parking in that stall on different hours of the day. So this is very much assigned parking and private.
Where do visitors park who are visiting somebody in the apartments?
Outside, there will be
those are
some
not assigned?
indoor.
So the outside are not assigned?
We have, I believe we have 2 parking spaces for each unit. So we have 90, is it 96 units, 96 parking stalls?
Yes.
And we only have 48 apartments. We don't expect each tenant to have 2 cars. There's going to be a lot of additional parking, we believe.
Well, these are all 2-bedroom, right?
They are,
2-bedroom units.
yes. And my current building in McCandless, it's 2 bedrooms. I think there's 1 tenant that has 2 vehicles. No, that was R6 zoning. I think we were required 1.5. Your ordinance requires 1.5 in that zoning district. But nonetheless, you know, with the way things are changing, we're envisioning a lot of people that'll live here in a 2-bedroom apartment. One's going to be an in-home office, or one's going to be a spare bedroom. But I don't envision 2 vehicles per apartment.
Okay. We've had 2 people speak up on this subject. Is there anybody else who wants to put a comment in? Okay. Okay, what's the next item on for variances?
The next item is minimum distance from parking area to apartment building. The ordinance requires a minimum of 15 feet. We're asking to have the parking facilities 5 feet away from the apartment building. This reduces the amount of impervious surface required to bring the pedestrians from their vehicles to the building, and also keeps all of the impervious surface area within a smaller surface area. And it makes the management of the stormwater more efficient.
Will you have bumpers at each parking spot to keep the front ends of the cars from hanging over the sidewalks?
Yes, actually, we do have car stops located in this site plan. You can see, I would have to zoom in for you.
Yeah,
But
if you
yes,
could zoom in, Tom, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Here, let's see. So you can see here's an ADA parking space with its access aisle next to it, and it has a curb, car stop, as well as the parking spaces continuing down this edge, as well as on the other side of the parking.
And you have a sidewalk along the southern side of your parking lot.
Yes, that sidewalk provides access to both buildings, and provides access to the recreational area back here.
Okay. All right. Any comments on that?
I had talked to Dan Stack about this, about as far as fire safety. And he's, showed him that we didn't have a cul-de-sac, but this parking area would in essence be a hammerhead to turn the trucks around. And he actually commented as well. I mean, the closer that parking area is to the buildings, the better it is for fire protection. He wanted to get the trucks as close as possible. And then in the center, that they're in between the two buildings, that's actually an area that the fire trucks will be able to pull onto. The ladder truck.
What material is that? What material is the area between the buildings?
This area here is concrete, and then it transitions into a concrete sidewalk that goes to the rear access points of the building.
What are those? And I can't, this is so small, I can't hardly see it, but what is beside the sidewalks?
I see. Yes, here, I'm sorry. We have gravel on both sides of the sidewalk in this area.
Wouldn't the trucks sink in there? Let's put it that way.
Well, it would be compacted subgrade as you would for any gravel parking area that receives, trucks or any kind of vehicular traffic. So the subgrade would be compacted to handle that.
Okay. Any comments from any of the planning commission members?
I go back to the fire truck turning around up in what was called a hammerhead. If there are cars all in there, there's still room for a large fire truck to make his pivot turn. I can understand it if there are no cars, but if it's fully loaded with cars.
I believe that owl is, what is that owl, Tom? Is it 22 feet or?
It's 24 feet.
24 feet wide. So from rear of car to rear of car, you have a 24-foot aisle.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, are there any other variance requests?
Yes, there's a third one, and that is has to do with the density calculation required by the ordinance.
Now, what are you talking about? Are you talking about density, the number of units per acre, or what?
Yes, so we came up with, I believe it was 46.18 dwelling units with our calculation. However, that calculation includes the area of slopes, and the site was previously developed and had previous cut and fill slopes. So our feeling is that this calculation is not taking into consideration that it was previously developed. And we're asking to increase the dwelling units from the 46.18 to 48 dwelling units.
Tom, I'll jump in here to explain
Sure.
a little more about the density calculations. Follow along if you can. This is a complicated one. So our code has defined gross lot area, which is just, this is how many acres this parcel is, period, versus net lot area, which is a calculation we invented, came up with, saw somewhere, you know, whatever. It's in the code, that you have to subtract 24 feet wide drive aisles, assuming that they are 24 feet wide, whether they are or not. I believe it's 180 square feet per parking space, again, regardless of whether there is a 9 or a 10-foot parking space. It just says you calculate it as 10 by 18. You also take the building footprint and any other impervious surface, and you subtract all of what will add up between all of those different aspects from the gross lot area or the actual area of the parcel. So once you have finished designing your site, all of the impervious surface being created in service of that site is removed from your density calculation number. You're also supposed to take out 50% of any slope that is greater than 25%. And then you multiply all of that by 14 to get your maximum units at the site. So once you take all of that out, it lands them at, like Tom said, some silly number like 46.2. 48 units is the maximum that could be built out of 2 garden apartment buildings, because each building cannot have more than 24 units. So I believe the nature of their variance request is that, among all of the other facts about that calculation, that if they were to take the small portion of the developable area that was half of the steep slopes, then that would bump them just over the 48 unit calculation rather than 46.2. Happy to repeat any of that if anyone has questions.
Please
It's
not.
complex.
No, that's good enough. Okay, and then you had some modifications.
Yes, that is correct.
These are ones we have to, comment on, so go ahead.
Right, sure. So the first one is a modification to the sidewalk ordinance. As I stated in my introduction, this is a steep cut slope along Thompson Run Road. And there are overhead utility lines and utility poles located on this side of Thompson Run Road. The adjacent properties do not have sidewalks, so we would not be connecting any existing infrastructure in doing so. So that's the first modification. Would you like for me to continue on, or would you like?
No, we'll discuss these one at a time.
Sounds good.
Okay, comments?
Well, the swimming club is just south of this a little bit. So if you put 48 families in there with kids, there's going to be kids walking back and forth to the swimming pool. Just north of this, you have the little plaza that has some restaurants and Rite Aid. Again, people walking back and forth. Just something to consider.
You do have to start somewhere then, don't you?
Duncan also is a bus route. So that's something also to consider. I've pulled up on the Google map and actually it looks pretty flat through most of that property by the road. I don't have the topography, but it looks actually pretty good. I've gone up and down that road and I've walked that road and it actually looks like a sidewalk would fit in there to me.
They don't take as much space as people tend to think they do.
I think you're right. And the property to the closer to Duncan, whichever direction, maybe that's east, has
North.
a lot of driveway there and some low, it would be easy to walk along it to get to Duncan, to get to those, the shopping that's there and the buses that are there too.
I would concur with the flat area of the sidewalk being on the northern half of the property. But the southern half, that steep slope does come down very close to the edge of the road.
It comes down to the road.
Yes.
It's in the road right away.
Sidewalks are a tough one because even though we don't have anything to connect to, we have to start somewhere. And we do want to have the township sidewalked at some point, even if it's 30 years in the future.
They'd fit great across the street. It's nice and flat.
Are you interested in building it there?
And the cemetery.
Yeah. Because they got because they applied for a sidewalks variance too, and previous council gave them that waiver, so.
Well, that would be a lovely place to use a fee in lieu if that modification were approved.
Dan, you have any
Well,
comments? on
I
this?
don't see people walking Thompson Run Road. I've
they're-
never seen anybody
Not now,
walk
that's for
Thompson.
sure.
Not now. It's too dangerous.
I have walked it. I have walked it.
I
You're-
have too, since I bought
you're
this
brave, then.
property. It's not,
Well, where's the swimming area? Is it to the south of?
To the south.
It is
Two
to the
two
south.
properties to the south.
Two properties to the south?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's the temple directly to the south and then the swimming club.
Yeah, Temple used to be the old handball court or racquetball court.
right.
And then the swimming pool. Okay, is there any other comments by planning commission members? So let's take a vote on this and
Oh,
see
wait a
where we
second.
are.
Ed, once again, before you take a vote on it, don't you want to ask if there's
Well,
any public
so,
comment?
I mean, this plan isn't ready for any votes yet. This is gonna need some revisions.
Well, I know that.
Yeah.
I was trying to give him some
Yeah, we need some direction here.
direction on which way we're thinking.
I see. Okay.
So we'll call this a preliminary vote at this point in time. When you come back, we can always change it.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Could I have a motion then on this proposal to grant a waiver?
I'll also move to vote on the waiver to sidewalks along Thompson Run.
Okay. Is there a second? Someone?
I'll make a second to vote on it.
Yeah, just to vote
Yeah.
on it, that's
Yeah.
all.
If there's no second, then there's no vote.
I know. So Jonathan made a second. So a positive vote would be to grant him the waiver. A negative vote would be to deny the waiver. Is that correct?
correct.
Well, yes.
Okay. So let us proceed. All in favor of granting the waiver, say aye.
Well,
Opposed?
that seems conclusive.
Opposed, say nay.
Hey,
Okay.
So everyone wants the sidewalk so
Everyone
far.
Okay,
wants
so
to
I
say
have a little discussion after your vote, though. How do you propose we get a sidewalk in when the grade is out over the, and maybe this is a question for you, Mark or Tom. How do we get, that's a county road, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So how do we get a sidewalk in there? With a, you know, we can't build an 8-foot high wall to put in a sidewalk. Because that's definitely like a 2-to-1 slope right now. If we went back 5 feet,
As parts of it are over 2 to 1.
right?
An
So we're
8-foot wall would
looking at a-
require a variance.
Yes. At least an 8-foot wall.
I mean, part of the problem we've got is we've got utility poles that are halfway up the slope.
Yeah, and you got a sanitary sewer line that runs along the berm of the road there as well. There's a
Tom,
sanitary
you're,
sewer
I
easement.
mean, I understand the planning commission's concern, but I'm not even sure that it's physically possible to do this. I mean, if we had to cut that slope back and then recut that back, we're going all the way up into the property to get a 2-to-1 slope from the edge of the sidewalk.
Well, I think
Yeah.
at this point, you take a look at it and see what you can come up with.
Well, what
If
I
you,
can
if you
do,
determine after you look at it that it's impossible, let us know that.
what I can do is cut some cross sections and give them to you,
Okay.
demonstrate that.
I mean,
Okay.
maybe,
What's your second modification?
The second modification is the ordinance says that a fill slope shall not exceed a 3-to-1 slope. We are proposing 2-to-1 fill slopes. In fact, right here on our screen is an example of our proposed 2-to-1 fill. Let me zoom out just for context of the overall development. So as you can see, we're not changing the geographic, the formations here. We're literally just pushing some of these contours out. So the fill slope, it will be a 2-to-1 versus what the ordinance requires is 3-to-1.
And I'll just chime in on that. I mean, typically in the past, as long as there's sufficient geotechnical information to justify that, that's been something that's been recommended.
I was thinking the same thing. Are there any other comments?
I think it
Okay, I
might
think what you
be
need to do then
prudent.
is to make sure that you have geotechnical information that supports your
Yes. Yes.
variance request.
And as I stated in my intro, we do have ACA engineering updating the geotechnical report to reflect this proposed land development versus the previous concept of townhomes.
Okay. Okay, what's your next modification?
The next modification is requires a buffer yard type D to be planted at the top of a cut and at the bottom of a fill. As you can see, we do have a few modifications here that are directly related to grading. And the requirement here would pretty much double up our buffer yard on the west side and on the east side, but also to be able to put a buffer yard at the top of a slope would really just reduce the buildable, developable area to something very small. And for a 3.76 acre site, we feel that much interior landscaping required just for grading purposes would prevent pretty much any development on this site.
The buffer yard D is what you have shown on your south and west sites right now, right?
That's correct. Yes, along Thompson Run Road and that property line with the temple.
And you're saying that is also required at the top of the slope.
That is
And
correct.
you want to eliminate it at the top of the slope.
At the top and bottom, yes.
But you already showed at the bottom on the west.
Yeah, that buffer yard there is satisfying the actual buffer yard requirement in the ordinance. This is not, I guess you would call this a buffer yard. But this is asking you to use the type D buffer yard as your planting schedule for the top of a cut and bottom of a fill.
Okay.
So it's not really called a buffer yard. We're just using, the ordinance is referencing buffer yard type D as the type of landscaping to use in those two areas.
Okay. RJ, do you have any comments on this?
No, I would refer to the, on Gateway's comment letter. It's under general comments 3. This one is letter B. Again, I think that all these modifications other than the sidewalks are based on the geotech report. So until we see what comes out of the new one, I kind of will reserve judgment.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
think
Do you have
the-
any other modifications?
Yes, there's one more. So there was a total of 4.
Okay.
The last one, again, this is related to grading. The top of a cut and toe of fill are not to be permitted closer than 20 feet. And if that slope is greater than 15 feet in height. We're asking to be able to grade, encroach into that 20-foot so-called setback from the lot line, because these slopes were already previously developed, from previous development, were already in excess of 15 feet in height.
I assume this would be something that would be covered by your geotechnical report also?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, Ted, and planning commission members, I think the intent of some of this grading was to, it really is tough to use on redeveloped sites. If you were dealing with a greenfield and starting over from scratch, it would be much easier to apply these, and that's probably how they were originally developed. But I think as long as the geotech data supports what they're proposing from a grading standpoint, I don't have any problem with it.
Okay.
Are the
Anybody else
setbacks,
have any comments?
are the setbacks met? From the
The
property
buil-
lines
The
back?
building,
on
the building
the-
setbacks are met.
They are the distance on the setbacks, they look so close there on the west, the southwest side.
Is that a rear
Down.
yard there?
Yeah, down at the bottom. Isn't the bottom southwest?
Yeah.
Okay, they look so close. There was a question before about the setbacks. Are the setbacks okay?
Sorry, I'm kind of trying to juggle a couple.
I don't see any drawings that
Thank
show
you.
the setbacks.
But yeah, let me take a look at the review letter here. I don't believe we called that out as an issue. but We can
It's on
double
the,
check.
It's on the zoning
On
plan.
on the last one, on the last plan, we did, and I thought the buildings were positioned kind of close like this, but I don't, just trying to remember.
What is the setback required on each side?
Give me 1 second and I will pull that up.
Because I didn't see any lines indicating the setbacks anywhere on the drawings, although I wasn't looking for them actually. Tom, do you know if they're shown anywhere on your drawings?
I'm sorry. It should be on the site plan.
CS 101.
CS 101?
So for I wish that this is me sharing my screen so I could use my pointer. So let's just go with up, down, right, left for the purposes of looking at this plan image right now. So on the
Okay.
right side, that backs up onto the Foxcroft townhome plan, or yeah, I think those are garden apartments townhomes. They're R3, I'm fairly certain. Regardless, for anything that is not R1 or R2, the Rear yard setbacks are 20 feet. So they've got to the south or the bottom, there's an institutional property. Looks to me like that's got 20 feet. The side yard depth from Foxcroft to this potential building would be 25 feet. And the same would go for abutting the street. And the front yard, which is kind of fuzzy what exactly the front is, but regardless, it's 30 feet. So just eyeballing that, you know, I'm sure once we get to the site plan, they should be on there. If they're not, they need to be. But it looks like we should be able to achieve 25, you know, on the sides and 20 on the rear.
We will add the zoning lines on there. We feel that we are in conformance.
Yeah,
Based upon my looking at the plan, they do comply with all those. We should have them labeled though.
Thank
yeah,
you.
know
I
it's-
couldn't find any place where we're shown. I looked on CS 101, but I didn't see
Yeah.
anything there other than a listing of them.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure the building setbacks are clearly identifiable in the site plan sheet for the next submission.
Okay.
As
Hey, RJ.
we have to address comments pertaining to that site plan.
Hey, RJ, can you unmute Dawn Poll?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I can only see a couple of you at a time when we screen share here.
That closest corner to the Foxcroft appears to be about 45 feet from the property line. The closest point of the building to any property line. I knew I brought my scale home for something.
There you go.
Got 5 of those in my desk drawer and 0 here.
There you go. They're still useful.
Okay. Were you going to talk to Don Poole? Is that what you were doing? You're putting him on or what's going
I
on?
did unmute him, but he has
Okay.
muted himself again.
Unmute me.
And just for your
Can you hear me
reference,
now?
everyone,
We
can
yes,
hear you.
we can hear you. If you mute yourself after I unmute you, if you are not a co-host, you do not have the power to re-unmute yourself. without
You got
asking.
all the power, RJ.
I do.
She does.
I know we're within the building lines because we twisted these, the reason these buildings are twisted is just for, you know, one's setting up higher than the other, and it's just to take advantage of the view to our west. You know, we're sitting up pretty high there.
I was going to ask you about what the first floor elevations were in this building, in each building.
Well, there are 9-foot ceilings on, we got 3 floors, and I think the parking garage is an 11-foot ceiling.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is how do they relate to each other? Where do the parking garages relate to each other? Is one above
What
or
are they,
below
Mark
the other?
or Tom? Aren't they like 3 feet different? 2.5, 3 feet?
Yeah, I'm getting the elevations now.
Yeah, building number 2 is slightly higher than building
That-
1.
That is
Okay.
correct, Don. It's
Yeah,
approximately.
One's
3
1109 and the other one is 1112.
Okay, that's good. One of my comments about this plan that you have is that it seems like you could develop the space in between these properties with some amenities of some sort. I don't know if anything is required in the code, but it would just be a nice thing to do.
It was our intention to do some of that. The problem was that we thought we could do that, but then we have to dedicate it to the township to get credit for it. To the town.
Oh,
Well,
Oh, I
our
see.
other area, our other situation, Ted, is anytime we put an impervious surface down, it takes away from our unit count.
yeah, I think that's what Mark was trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, but
No, I think it's that. And
if
they're
your
like, they,
modification goes from 46.18 to 45.75 or something, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of difference. I would rather see some amenities in there, you know, some kind of a patio or something nice where people could go out and sit.
Yeah, I think that what Mark pointed out, and this is an interesting issue that I have yet to have to deal with here. But it says that we are supposed to have the recreation area dedicated to the town, which would imply that the town would then potentially be responsible for that recreation area, which I think we have no desire to be. So maybe there's a way to work with that so that if they were to include a recreation area in the complex, it would not be owned by us.
Yeah, it's supposed to be dedicated to the town.
I'm gonna double check it, but I'm pretty sure it says dedicated.
That's a very strange thing to have, actually.
It does
Well.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah, the language in the ordinance specifically says that it has to be dedicated to the township, and if not, then there's a fee associated with it.
Let's see here.
It's 1371.12 RJ.
Yep, I'm looking at it. Oh yes, shall offer the public dedication of land required by the zoning code for open space, park and recreational use. We, council, is authorized to enter into an agreement with the developer for the construction. So not only would they be dedicating land, but we would be responsible for putting the recreation in. That was passed on February 26th, 1990.
Wow.
Yes, that is why everybody pays our fee in lieu, which also hasn't been updated since 1990.
Put that on your list.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I think that, this is in the design standards section. So, town attorney, please weigh in on this thought. Since it is in the subdivision and land development portion of the ordinance, perhaps a modification could be considered that it would not have to be dedicated to the town, but simply dedicated to remain recreational area and in possession of the private property owner.
I would agree with that.
So there's an option.
What is the amount of recreational area in this plan?
I think by ordinance, it would come up to somewhere around 10,000 square feet would need.
Yeah, it's just shy of 10,000 square feet.
It doesn't say what it has to be. So if
Oh.
they were to do an interior walking trail or playground equipment or something that was still a pervious surface, that's not something that I see. I mean, it's a couple pages worth of code, so I'm skimming here, but I don't see anything that precludes pervious surface being used in that.
Okay, I guess the other question I had is relating to stormwater. Has that been looked at, Dan?
Yes, they have provided a stormwater management report. We have a lot of comments related to it, but it's an underground system.
Mhm.
Everything leads to it. It's under the parking lot, and then they're connecting in down onto a existing inlet on Thompson Run.
Okay. So that needs work?
Yes, there's,
Okay.
we have a number of comments related to that. I'm not going to bore the planning commission with that, but if they're coming back in, I'm sure they'll be able to address them.
Okay, good.
This is interesting. Sorry, back on the rec space thing. There is a stipulation in here that says the plan for recording can also set forth the method by which the perpetual administration and maintenance of the recreation space is to be achieved. So I would say that that leaves some wiggle room to allow the developer to essentially do what I described. But it would have to be in a form approved by town council.
Okay. Well, I would consider some kind of a patio or something back there. It would be nice for people, have a place for people to sit and BS and so forth, even in this Corona age that we're in.
Hey, outdoor
Yeah,
seating is what you want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the property definitely lends itself to some nice walking trails. There's nice piece of property there. And we talked about, doing some sort of a pavilion and maybe an outdoor grill, but again, it's like we're shell shocked about the impervious surface, doing anything that created impervious surface.
Did you bring any colored renderings of the buildings themselves with you?
We have, Tom, you have the rendering of a building, don't you? From
I
Jared.
have what's in the land development set that was submitted with our site plans.
Yeah, bring that up. I mean,
Yeah.
the building's not complete. We're just getting our MEPs worked on right now for the buildings, and we're waiting for those to be completed till we finalize the buildings themselves for construction.
And while you're up pulling that up, not to really belabor the rec space issue, but just to provide some context for the planning commission, the variance that is going to go before the zoning hearing board at the end of the month, without getting into adjudicating that, the way that it is presented is to request to go up to the maximum 48 units on the property. It does not necessarily state how exactly they would get to that number. So I don't know how the zoning hearing board is going to choose to handle that, but perhaps, depending on whether it's granted and how, that might not eliminate the ability to have some sort of passive, or even engaged recreation space that creates more impervious surface. TBD on that, but just to put it on everyone's radar, and now we can stop talking about the rec space. At least
Okay.
for today.
Can you just go over the
Recreation's over.
materials on the building, Don, what you have in mind at the present time?
I'm sorry, Ted, what?
Could you go over the materials on the building, what you have at the present time?
It's going to be a combination of vertical and horizontal hardy siding and brick.
Okay.
We'll
Is
do
the
our
brick-
overhangs in aluminum, just be totally maintenance free.
Does the brick go all the way up to the third floor? Does it stop at the top of the first floor?
Right now, yeah, I don't know if you can tell what's brick. Maybe if you blow that up, Tom, you can see what's brick and what's siding. In some areas, the brick goes all the way up, and then in some areas, it's
Okay.
How those architects are.
They're tough.
They just draw whatever, and then they expect the contractor to build it and keep
That's
it in
right.
budget.
Okay. Shingles on the roof?
Yeah, I think for now, that's what we have figured. Shingles on the roof. All the units will have balconies. We'll have an elevator in each building. It's going to be similar to that building I put in Stonebrook. We'll have an elevator. We'll go into a secure parking area underneath the building, take the elevator up to your floor. It's designed as 8 units per floor. They're all, I believe, 12 to 1,300 square feet. They're all pretty similar.
Do you
So they're
have any-
large 2-bedroom units.
Are there any units that are accessible?
Right now, I don't know that we do. I don't think we're that far.
Okay.
I
think that may be required by the
I think
code.
they're all going to be accessible.
Well, you don't want to do that. I mean,
Well, I
make
mean,
them truly
when it
accessible.
comes to bathrooms, I'm saying as far as getting into the building, getting on the elevator, getting to your unit, it'll
That's
all be
true.
low
That
profile
part will all be
threshold.
accessible, but to make it truly accessible, that you have to modify the kitchens and bathrooms pretty severely.
They'll be adaptable.
Adaptable. Okay.
We think that, with the 2 buildings too, we're talking that, what's happened in McCandless over the years, you have a lot of senior housing buildings, huge buildings. That one down where Trader Horn is ginormous. The largest building I've seen in a long time, but we think this will be a nice alternative to some seniors, that it won't be as expensive, as costly, be independent.
Okay.
Ted, I've got a couple of questions if you're done.
Sure. Absolutely.
And this goes back to the change. When we saw this a year ago, a little more than a year ago, it was presented as 23 townhomes. Tell me again why it changed to 48 apartments?
Market and just the number of units, you know, to make it work with the cost of the land and the development costs. It didn't work for 23 units.
So okay, I misunderstood RJ. I thought she'd said it physically. You couldn't fit the old 23 units that you were proposing in the old property.
You're going back a ways. I don't quite remember, but I think there were some issues even with the 23 units. Yeah, we came for a variance because your townhouse zoning requires 50 feet between buildings, and it just knocked out a number of units that didn't even, I can't recall, honestly.
Okay, well, the old plan showed 4 buildings and, as I said, 23 units. And I don't know whether I'm comparing apples and apples, but it sure looks to me like the footprint of the old plan certainly is met by the footprint, if not exceeded by the footprint of the current plan. So maybe it doesn't, I don't think it's a physical issue. I think it probably turned out to be market or economic. The next part of my, and I'm disappointed in that, frankly, but that's neither here nor there. I think 23 townhomes is a more desirable addition to the neighborhood than 48 apartments. But
I can provide some clarity on the variance and the physical aspects of the site. So essentially what happened was the plan that was originally being designed for the 23 townhome units to fit that number of units onto the site would have required 20 feet between the townhome blocks instead of 50. And the zoning hearing board did not appear to be inclined to grant that variance. So in lieu of, I think Mr. Pohl believing that the site would not work for him for less than 23 townhomes, he chose to come back with a garden apartment plan.
okay. What do the neighboring Foxcroft, and this is maybe for the town attorney, for somebody, do the neighboring Foxcroft tenants, they're not tenants, they're owners, do those owners have to approve the rezoning of this property? I noticed in the submission that you sent us a year ago, you had all the names and addresses of those adjoining Foxcroft owners. So why were those names and addresses given, and do they have to approve this before it gets rezoned?
The adjoining property owners list is required to be provided to applicants to the town because we send letters of notification to any of the adjoining property owners for a rezoning app. The residents or adjoining property owners do not need to approve. That's solely town council's decision, which they did approve the rezoning at that time.
Okay, when those owners were sent the letters, were they thinking it was going to be a 23 unit townhome, or did they know that it was going to be an 84 unit, or excuse me, a 48 unit apartment?
That happened before I was here, but in general, I believe that a adjoining property owner would just be advised as to the district that someone is requesting to rezone to.
Does the town attorney know that?
He's been here less time than me, so.
Well, again, it goes to my point.
What you think?
The people in the Foxcroft are owners, and I can see where, and Denny Mascari to the north obviously has his own opinions, and he, I think, even appeared at our last hearing.
He did.
And so if the whole complexion of this changed, which it clearly has, it went from, as I recall, 2-story townhomes to now a 3-story apartment. I'm just wondering if there was a sufficient notice, if comments were received, or if they still can be received, if any of that is something that needs to be looked at.
Dan, there absolutely can. I mean, the matter is, they're not seeking a use variance here. These types of apartments are allowed here. But this, you all are just talking about this, to give feedback to the developer before they come back with the formal plan. So there is opportunity for any neighboring property owners to come and speak and offer their opinion to the planning commission. You know, that can all happen at whatever the next meeting would be that that the developer comes to.
Okay.
And folks will have an
I have
opportunity
a comment,
at town council too. So, sorry.
the townhouse plan that was proposed, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe they were 3-story townhomes that abutted the Foxcroft plan.
Okay, they were 3. All right.
Yeah, along the back, and I believe they were quite a bit closer to Foxcroft. And as far as Mr. Mascari, you know, I understand he has a personal interest, but he also has 95% of his lot covered in asphalt. And he's also encroached onto this property by quite a bit. And he's going to be opposed to anything that is proposed here.
I think we're not looking to relitigate the rezoning here because that already went through.
No.
But
No, I'm just sharing my opinion, that's all.
right. So just because this is a recorded meeting, I do want to state for the record, Dan, since you had asked about the adequate notice and everything, we did follow all legal requirements regarding timelines and notice and placarding and all that good stuff. I'm pretty sure that there was at least one Foxcroft resident that appeared and gave public comment, but I would have to go back and check the testimony record.
Okay. And lastly, I know for a fact that there was fairly significant discussion about the traffic impact along Thompson Run and at the intersection just north of this property, which is Duncan, Thompson Run, and Ferguson. And that's when we thought there were 23 units. Now there are 48, more than twice as many. And I would disagree that I think for 2-person apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, therefore probably 2-people apartments, I think you can almost count on 2 cars for every adult these days, an adult per car. Anyway, my point is I think the traffic impact is going to be significant. And I hope that a traffic study is done to take all of that into account, because as we stated last time, that intersection backs up 10, 12, 15 cars deep. And if you add this many cars and this many people that it doesn't have now, that obviously only makes it worse.
I have requested a full traffic study based on the concerns about that intersection, and that will be required to be submitted before this one moves forward.
That's all.
Okay, anybody else? Nobody else? Kim, do you have any comments?
Nope, I kind of gave them as we went along, but thank you.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we're done then.
Sorry, before we wrap, I actually did have one resident indicate that they would like to
Hey,
provide
how about
comment
that?
if we're willing to do
Okay.
that.
Absolutely.
All right,
Not willing.
hopefully she's still here. I'm sure she is. And Tom, would you mind pulling this down from the screen share?
There we go.
All right, Ms. Sponholz, there you are.
Well, in full disclosure, I'm a resident and I'm also a member of town council. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. I'm working from some notes here, but one, I totally agree with what RJ just said, is that we should have a traffic study related to this development. I am very concerned about the sidewalks issue. I understand the topography because I looked at it. And I think that at the very least, we need to be looking at how to connect this development to the bus stops on Duncan Ferguson. I also am concerned about the slopes, but I'm going to leave that to the engineers. And probably my largest issue, one of my issues is that I'm very concerned, because it's one of my things that I work on is the stormwater management related to this issue. And this is clearly an increase in impervious surfaces in this development versus what exists today. So I'm following that closely. And I do have a question about, which I was unclear about, is that as I see it, there appears to be 48 units. And what I couldn't see on the plans is what is the total number of parking spaces related to the 48 units?
It's 96.
96, okay. All right, well, that sounds somewhat reasonable to me. It's, the plans did not show that to me that I saw, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just to show you the math of that, 74 of those 96 parking spaces are located inside the building. So there's indoor parking for the residents with an additional 22 parking spaces outside.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I guess I would just end, because this is a comment, not anything you're bound to do anything about, but I would say that I do think for this property, given its slopes, its topography, that it seems like 48 units is quite a lot to try to propose to be developed on this land at this time. But having said that, I'm sure that you will, you're going to try to prove to us that it is not too much. But I have a concern. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else on this particular project by anyone? Okay,
I don't
I
have
guess that's
anyone
it then.
else signed up for any public comment at this point.
You'll be going to the
Zoning hearing board?
zoning hearing board and then back to us next month, right?
Yes.
Well, potentially next month. I mean, if you all are ready with revisions, then yes.
Yeah.
When do the revisions have to be in by?
This is a really complicated way to explain it. 3 Fridays before the meeting, so essentially 2 full weeks prior.
It's our intention to try to get things to you this Friday.
Okay, that would be soon enough.
We thank you for your comments. We'll take them back and we'll continue to work on addressing all the items.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Okay, now we have discussion and scheduling of town attorney presentation.
Steve, that is you.
Yeah, so we were been discussing about putting on a presentation to the Planning Commission that would be recorded, and it would be a general refresher, certainly not a 101 level course, but maybe a 2 or 301 course, but just general Planning Commission issues, things that come up regularly. And the idea would be that this sort of training would be around an hour or so. The presentation and it would include questions. It could be maybe a little bit longer, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. But that we would also keep that video available so members that would join the Planning Commission in the future could watch it and sort of get up to speed on issues. Members of Town Council who want to know more about what goes on here and can't come to the meetings could watch it. New members of Town Council, if there are any. Town employees that are curious could watch it. So again, we're just looking at like a hour and 15-minute presentation that my colleague Krista Staley would be presenting to the commission. And we were hoping to try and nail down a date here in the next, I would say in the next month, 6 weeks at the most. with you. And we don't need to necessarily decide that tonight. I don't know, RJ, if you had a different
Yeah,
idea on. do there, but-
I mean, normally I would say to do it at the meeting, the April meeting. I'd probably not like to do it later than that. We do potentially have 2 major plan revisions and 2 simple subdivisions, plus maybe a conditional use coming next month, depending on how much stuff people drop off by next Friday. So, you know, we might already be in for a long one. I'm open to picking a different day if that's the case.
Does it have to be the
Why don't you pick
same?
another Tuesday of the month?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was on another Tuesday, not the same night as the meeting.
Yeah, I don't think that we have any other boards and committees that meet on Tuesdays other than us that they'd be using the Zoom, but let me just double check.
RJ, we just used a computer, the new person just used a computer or something to figure out how to get the personnel people scheduled together. We just dumped all of our availabilities on him and he did some kind of magic and he popped out a time when everybody could come.
Oh.
Is his name Tim?
Tim, Nick?
Something management,
Nick? Are you
services
thinking?
management?
Yeah, it's Nick Mance.
Oh, that wasn't even close. Okay. Anyway, so he did that for us. I don't know if, just to give you,
I
because
would
we
be
were having
thrilled to delegate that to him.
a really hard time. We were having a really hard time scheduling and we just all gave them to him. And like I said, it was magic.
Well, does the group prefer a Tuesday or are we open to other days?
I'm open to any day.
I'm open.
Tuesday might be easiest just because we've got a lot of Monday, Wednesday meetings with the other
Right.
committees.
So I would say if that's the case, shoot for either the week before, or the week after the next planning commission meeting. We would have to check with Krista to make sure she's not
So-
scheduled to be
So
somewhere.
March 30th, you're talking about March 30th then? That would be.
That would be the earliest, or the week after, whatever that would be after the planning commission in April.
March 30th is the 5th
13th.
Tuesday. Is there a plant or is there a council meeting the 5th Monday?
No, it would be the 4th.
Kim's like, no way.
So that's what I'm saying. You could
We should
you could
move, we
avoid
should
having
move
2
all of our
meetings in a row.
meetings to the 5th Monday of every month. That's a good plan.
Yeah,
Well-
those weeks that the 4th Wednesday falls the same time as the 4th Monday are pretty brutal for me. So I am opposed to March 23rd specifically.
Well, I was thinking
Every
March
Monday.
30th would be good because there wouldn't be any meetings on either side of it.
Right.
That's a great point.
I was booked every Monday last year, Kim. I love those 5th Monday. That was the best.
Yeah, Steve and I have
Yeah.
been hanging out on Mondays for a while.
Quite some time. Quite some
Does-
time.
Does anybody that's here have a problem with
March 30th.
March 30th, Tuesday, March 30th?
No.
We didn't even need a computer. Oh my
Yeah, that was
goodness.
easy. Although I was
That
really
sounds good to
excited to
me.
make Nick do that. I
Let's
think that,
pencil it in and we'll check with Krista to make sure she's available and then we'll
Yep.
confirm by email.
That sounds good.
Perfect,
Super.
perfect.
okay, so I'm just gonna, before we all go here, nope, March 30th, perhaps check with Krista. Yes,
Yes.
okay. You guys are gonna love her. She's great. We have a lot of fun.
Okay. We won't have minutes then tonight, is that true?
No, I apologize. We've just been doing sort of the 1-2 staff shuffle with some of the internal
Okay.
hires. So I just need a little more time to review and edit them.
That's all
before
right.
I get to you
And
guys.
and we had our general public comment already. Is that
We did. We don't
Yes.
even have anyone but Shelley still on the call. So
okay?
unless she's got another comment to add, I could always queue her up.
Yeah, you should still
When-
ask.
When
Yeah.
will you be putting together your list of changes to the ordinances?
Oh, I mean, that's
What's your
that's gonna be-
projected date?
Boy, oh boy, do I want to pin myself down. I mean,
Yeah. I'm not
that-
putting, I'm just getting, is it going to be this year?
I would say that we would definitely be engaged with a planning firm this year,
Oh,
presuming the council is comfortable with whatever terms might be negotiated for that.
So
the
you intend
actual
to update
final.
the entire ordinance then, is that correct?
For the most part, I mean, there are going to be some things that carry forward, you know, like, but this is a process that's very similar to a comprehensive plan, except it's focusing on making your code work in tandem with that. So,
Okay.
you know, but the engagement process and the timeline's pretty similar, I would imagine.
So we should be getting in any comments to you that we see quickly.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have ample time, but I will take them, you know, it's now throughout the process, totally fine to send them to me anytime. I have a
Okay.
spreadsheet basically running of all the different little issues to check in on. Because there
Okay.
may be some code that just carries forward because it works. But you know, the process is gonna kind of bear that all out.
Okay. Okay, any other comments by anybody? I think everybody's tired, huh? Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn? Everybody wants to stay, right?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second,
that was, who seconded it?
I did. Greg O'Custis.
Greg? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Greg's ready to go.
All
Oh
right.
man, all right.
So we're done for tonight?